Hello and welcome to the new lecture on graphical user interface programming in Python. In this lecture we are going to discuss the listbox component. What is a listbox component? Basically a listbox component is a component which is used to display multiple values, and in this component we can select one or multiple option out of the given values. So before starting with the lecture, let's see some example of the list component. So if you see these images, this is an example of list box where multiple options are there, and out of those multiple options you can select one or multiple values. So this is also an example of list box where multiple values are getting displayed and we can select values from them. So what are we going to do is, in this example we are going to implement that list box in our example. So first let's create the Python file and name it as listbox, and before starting with the example let's do the needful import tkinter as tk, and do the basic things like creating a window for us. Window is required, so window is equal to tk function, and then as we do usually just apply some basic dimension to the window. Say 500 cross 500 would be the dimension, and let's give a title to this window dot title, and this time the title will be list box, as we are going to demonstrate list box in this example. And finally we are going to execute the main loop function so that our window sustain over the screen. Sorry, Control Z, main loop. Okay, now basic things are done. Let's once run the program and check the window. Now this is the window, 500 by 500 dimension, and the list box is on the title. So what we are going to create is, in this example we are going to create the list box. Okay, but before creating the list box, what we are going to check is what kind of example we are going to see in this. What we are going to do is, we are going to create a list box where options will be displayed one by one, say val1, val2, val3, like this. Multiple options will be there in the, out of which we can select one or multiple options could be selected. And what we are going to do, we are going to put a label at the top, and when we select any value from this list box, for example if I am selecting this value will be displayed here on the label. If I display multiple values, those multiple values will be displayed over the label without any button. We are simply going to select the value from the list box and they are simply going to be displayed over the label. So through this example we are going to demonstrate the working of a list box, how to implement the list box, how to add the values to the list box, how to extract the values from the list box. Everything will be seen in this example. So let's get back to our example. First we need a label so that when we select values from the list box, it will be displayed on the label. So first let's create the label tk.label, and let's put the title to this label as, not title, text, sorry, text as display, simply because it's going to display something. And to make the content visible, as usual, we are going to take some font, Arial, and the font size let be 30, and if you want the content to be in bold, you can put bold also. So after label, just pack this label with the window. So pad y is equal to 5. Now we will create the list box. So we'll name it as list is equal to tk.listbox. okay, we have list box, and here what we are going to do is, we will simply create the list box and let's first pack it, list.pack. Now before proceeding with the list box, we need to understand how how to add values to the list box. For adding the value to the list box, we need to create a tuple. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a variable var underscore list, and we have to create a tuple, and in this tuple we need to add all those values which are to be added. Say we are naming the programming languages Python, Java and C++, and say HTML, and we can have some more names, JavaScript, and can have C as the language. So these are the values which we are supposed to add to the list box. So before creating the list box, we need to create a tuple, and what we are going to do is we are going to create a simple variable and string variable, and we are going to add this list to this variable. Okay, just ignore this warning, there's no problem with this warning. And once this is added in the list box, what we have to do, there is a argument known as list variable, and here we will add this variable which is containing all the value from this tuple. Tuple is containing few values like multiple texts are there which are representing the name of the languages like Python, Java, C++, HTML, JavaScript and all. And then what we have done, we have added that list to the variable, and then we have added that variable or attached that variable with the list box. I think there is some problem with the list name, so let's name it as list1. Now once the variable is attached with the list box, what we can do is we need to now add the functionality that if I select any value from the list box, that value will be displayed over the label. So for that we need to define a function, say def, say display is the name of the function, display. Okay, one more thing, in this case whenever you are working with a list box, whenever you select an item from the list box, an event is generated, and that event need to be captured in this function. Okay, because here we are not supposed to use any of the button, we are not going to use any button, we are simply going to use the event. Whenever some user is selecting something from the list box, then the event which is generated will be captured by this function, and accordingly the operation will be taken. Now what we are going to do in this, but before that, before doing anything in this function, we need to do one more thing. Once how will the list box be knowing that the particular event which is generated by selecting this list box has to be captured by this event? So for that we need to bind the event and the list box. So what we'll do is we'll say list1 dot bind. Okay, there is a function known as bind, and in this function we are going to define two things. Number one is the event, that is list box select. Whenever you select the list box, the list box select event occurs, and second argument will be the function, name of the function which is display, which need to be executed as the result of this particular event. So what we are doing, we are binding the event and the function together, so that whenever we select any value from the list box, that event list box select is generated, and that is sent to this display function, so that the display function can take the action accordingly. Now one more thing before proceeding with this, in the list box we do have the facility to select multiple values. So there is an argument known as select mode, where we can have the value to decide whether we are going to select single or multiple values. Okay, so select mode could be even single. If I say tk, so you can, even through this also we can pass, and instead of string we can take the constant from the tk module, or we can say tk dot multiple. Okay, multiple can also be used. Okay, tk dot multiple can also be used. So if we are having the multiple mode, so what will happen, user can select multiple values from the function. So what we have to do is we have to capture all those values which are selected by the user. So what we are going to do is we are going to capture all those indexes. If you check this, in order to understand this clearly, let me just explain this. If this is your list box and the value are v1, v2, v3, v4 and v5, every value is having an index. This is at index 0, this is at index 1, this is at index 2, this is at index 3, this is at index. Basically index represent the position of that particular item on the in the list box. So whenever you need to extract the value, we need to capture the index of that particular item. So what we are going to do, we are going to take a variable named as index, and we are going to extract all the values which have been selected from the list box into this particular index. So what we are going to do, we are going to say list1 dot selection, current selection. Basically current selection function gives us all the indexes of the value which have been selected by the user. If user select 1, this will give us 1. If the user has selected multiple, the multiple indexes of all the item will be captured on or will be stored on this index. Now what I will do is I will execute a loop where I will go through individual index one by one. Okay, but before that we need one more thing. We need a variable, say string variable, which is blank, because I am going to combine all the values in that string before displaying it over the label. So for I in index, so from this index collection, one by one the indexes will be captured or will be transferred on this I, and I am going to store all the value. I am going to concatenate all the values which we are going to get from this list one dot get, and the index is I. So individually one by one we are going to transfer the index of the selected item one by one, and from that index the value will be extracted and will be concatenated with this string. Once all the value have been collected on this variable s, now we are going to finally display this over the label. So my label is l1.config, and we are going to simply assign the value which have been collected from the list box over the label through its text property. So this is how we are going to work with the list box. I hope this is clear to everyone. What we are doing here is we are simply one by one. First we have collected all the indexes of the selected item, because as we have discussed that the list box has the facility to select multiple values. So we have done what we have made the select mode as multiple, and now whenever the user will select multiple value, the cur selection function will extract all the indexes of the value selected over this variable, and from this collection we are going to extract one index at a time, and we are going to extract that value from the list box one by one, and we are adding those values over the string variable. Once that string is ready with all the values, we are going to add it to the label. I hope this is clear to everyone. Now we are going to execute the program and check. So if you see, these are the value. I think the display, the font is small for the list box, so let's increase the font of the list box. So what we can do is we can add the font argument with this also, font, and just increase the size so that the visibility is better. Okay, now let's run the program again. Now we can see this is the list box. Here is the list box, and it is having the following values, and this is the label over which the value from this list box is to be displayed. Basically what will happen, whatever the value which we are going to select from this list box are all going to be displayed over here. So what we are, let's select some value, say Python, Java, C++. You can see we can select multiple values, and if I deselect any value, that value is removed from the label. So whatever you are going to select is going to be displayed over the label. So I hope this example is clear. So just recall this example quickly. In this example, what we have done, we have first created a label to simply display the selected value from the list box. Then we have created a list of values, that is, sorry, tuple of values, where we have put some name of the programming languages, and then we have assigned that entire list, a tuple, to a variable named as var. Why? Because if I need to add certain value to my list box, there is an argument with the list box known as list variable, and I'll assign that variable which is containing all those values which need to be displayed over the list box. So how to create the list box? Name of the list box, tk.listbox is the function where first argument is the list variable, which will take the values which are to be displayed over the list box. There is a second argument known as select mode, which will decide whether the user can select single or multiple values. And lastly, what we have to do, we have to, in this case, in the case of list box, we are not using any button, because whenever you select any value from the list box, an event is generated which is known as list box select. So this event will call the function accordingly. Instead of button, directly the function will be called whenever we select any value from the list box. So what we are doing is we are binding the event with the list box and the function. So our list box, the name of our list box is list1. List1.bind. Bind will bind this event along with this function. So whenever this event is generated by selecting a value from the list box or multiple values from the list box, this function will be executed. And what we have defined in this function, if you look onto this function, we have passed the event. So this event which we have binded with this function will be transferred to this function, and this function will know that the selection has been made by the user. So what this function is going to do, first we are going to extract all the indexes of the values which have been selected by the user onto a variable, and from that collection of indexes we are going to extract the index one by one over this variable I, and from that index we are going to get the value from the list box, list1.get, and we will pass that index one by one. The values from all the indexes will be added or concatenated into a string known as s. So we are using s plus equal to. So all the values from this list box one by one will be extracted and will be added to this string, and finally we are going to display that string which is containing all the selected value into the label known as L1. So this is all about this program, where we have used the list box to select the values from the list box, and whenever we select the value from the list box, those values are getting displayed. So just before ending the lecture, let's run the program again and check. If I am selecting anything, we have activated multiple selections. So whatever we are selecting from the list box are getting displayed over the label, and when we are deselecting it, it is removed from the label. So I hope this example is clear to everyone. So this is all for this lecture. So kindly give a valuable feedback after watching the video in the comment section, and please do subscribe my channel if you are watching this video on the YouTube, or please follow my page on the Facebook if you are watching this video on the Facebook, because this is of great support so that I keep on creating such lectures for the students. Thank you very much.